going on, everybody? My name is Box from Box and Jackalope, and welcome back to the Kun-Lai Campfire. Joined by our regular co-hosts, Jakai and Skull Shorties, we have a very special guest today, the author of the upcoming novel Shadows Rising, Madeleine Roux. Thank you so much for joining us today, Madeleine.
Thank you. Oh, there he goes. My dog's gonna chime in as well. Midgeon on the squeaky toy. He'll be accompanying us today. Thanks for having me. This is exciting. It's always fun. Smidge. Okay. He's really going at it. All right, I stole the toy. I have it now.
Usually my cat during our podcast is always playing Siege on the door sometimes.
Yeah, they love to make their opinions known on these things.
Usually you can tell if they're Horde or Alliance players.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Smidge is definitely. Well, I would say he's probably Horde. Yeah, he's pretty. Or well, I don't know though. With Worgen, that's tough. That might swing him to the Alliance.
I think today we have just 5 or 6 questions each, so we'll kind of take turns asking them. But I guess I'll start off with this one though. Was it challenging having to write about the Horde Council and their struggles, like right after the events of Battle for Azeroth and after the invasion of the Black Empire in 8.3? Because that had to be like a really fun story moment to pick up at.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, like you said, and it's fun. It's kind of, a book like this, it's both of those things at all times, right? You're sort of constantly under a lot of pressure, but then you're also kind of doing something that's like bucket list. So yeah, it was definitely a challenge just because there's so many voices now, and you've got, if you have them all in one scene, which we do occasionally, you're trying to kind of give everybody their moment, but you're also trying to be cognizant of the fact that they might not always all be there. You know what I mean? I don't know if every single member of the Horde Council is always going to be an Orgrimmar, so you're sort of like, okay, who would logically be here at this point?
Right.
How do we choreograph this scene so that it feels like everyone gets to talk a little bit and no one's sort of getting forgotten? So it is, even just from a logistical standpoint, it's really a challenge, because I'm one of those people, I don't love having a ton of characters all in one scene. It makes it very difficult to make sure everyone gets their say. But with a scenario like that, you don't really have a choice. You got to make sure that everybody gets a little screen time. So yeah, I mean, it's cool because we've got so many allied races now, so getting to sort of have them make their first book appearance was really fun.
And yes. And that's so interesting that you say that, because I think one of my favorite parts of Battle for Azeroth's storyline was all the races seemed to be involved in some way, shape, or form, even if it was in a minor way. I always talk about G Firepaw and the Vol'jin Pindarin on our channel, but even he got a little bit of screen time in BFA near the end, and that was really awesome. So
I think you'll be very pleased with this book then. There may be some content for you in this book.
Oh man. That is so awesome. So that answered, I had that question actually written down later on, so that even answered. That is so awesome. So cool.
Hey.
Yeah, I don't want to, obviously I can't go into specifics, but
right.
Yeah, I think you'll be pleased.
Awesome.
Well, that's one of the challenges of this book, right? Is that I'm so, as a fan up until, just a fan up until very recently, I'm aware that everybody kind of has their little pocket of the universe that they love. And so while the book, just by its very nature and the scope of what we're doing, not everyone can kind of get their day, right? We are telling a very specific story, but, I felt motivated also as a fan to try and sneak in some things here and there. So, if you're not, a troll fan, there's still going to be stuff in this book for you. If you're not, an Anduin fan, there's still going to be stuff for you. I tried really, really hard to sort of keep that in mind at all times.
Yeah, it's the delicate balance of quality and quantity there.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. And just to like also trying not to go like full like fans, you know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to do it just to do it. It has to still be relevant to whatever's happening. But yeah, you know, you don't want people to feel left out. And we're dealing with almost like 3 factions in a sense in this book, because we have the Horde and we have the Alliance, and then we have like this 3rd faction, which is like Sylvanas and her whole crew. So, you know, it really feels like it covers a huge range of the world.
So I think for the next question, I'm actually going to toss it over to Skull.
Hey, hello there.
Hello.
So after Lorthamar and Thalristra, who, you know, we got a very steamy romance story with.
I don't think it was that steamy. That was pretty tame.
Tame steamy.
Yeah. For Warcraft, I guess it was steamy.
Yeah, for Warcraft. Who would you like to write a romantic story about next?
Oh my gosh, I have to be so careful. You know, it's hard because like I try to have fun with everyone on Twitter, but I'm also trying not to like. I don't want to like let out my personal ships, I guess. It feels weird, like, because then I feel like people will think that I'm gonna try and sneak it in or something, which obviously I would not. That's not my job. But so I'm trying to like answer this very delicately because I don't want to piss anyone off. Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I mean, there is a pretty dense romance subplot in this book. And I kind of want that to be my answer because I got to do it. And no one knows that it's coming. And so, yeah, that's my... I'll answer it as well. I'll answer it 2 parts. So I would say my real answer is the romance that you get in this novel, which everyone will know about soon. And then my one that like hasn't really been touched on or established. I mean, honestly, I would love to like bring Agra and Thrall, like I wish she could like hang out more. You know?
Oh yeah.
Like, I feel like she's kind of an underappreciated character. I think people like forget that she even is around, and obviously it's difficult because it's like, you know, he's got kids now, and you know they would also be fun to have around. But yeah, I would love to get to do more with them. She's definitely like talked about in this book, obviously, because Thrall is a POV character, but yeah, I would love to I don't know, I have such a like I have such a heart eyes for like battle couples. I don't know, like the idea of like 2 just like really badass hardcore warriors like together is very appealing to me. So I would love to have gotten to do like a more of an action sequence with the 2 of them, because I think that would have been fun. But
yeah, I actually really like Agra and Thrall. One of my favorite quest lines in Cataclysm was, in fact, it's the one where like Thrall gets split up into all 4 elements, and you and Agra have to go piece them back together, and you get to see like what Thrall wants and Thrall hates, and it's I really like the ending of like you get to see Thrall's wedding, and I really like the 2, and I would really love to see more of them. Like we got that in Worlds of Draenor for a little bit, but we just don't get them enough, and that's why a lot of people are like, well, you know, I always like Jaina and Thrall a little bit more, and you know that's fair because you see them a lot together. But with Agra and Thrall, it's only in the books.
I think too, there's to me it's always interesting. Like they seem really resistant to. When I say they, I mean I guess just the writers in general, and this is totally fair. I mean, this is not like necessarily a criticism; it's just an observation. But like, it seems like there's in the beginning of WoW, there was a lot of like, you know, kind of more like risky romances where there was like cheating and tension and affairs and things like that, and like kind of like clandestine romances, and I kind of would like to see that come back. I don't know, I feel like you know, we seem to be okay with like war crimes and genocide as a feature of the story, so to me it's like I don't see how like you know, an affair would really be that much different in terms of making a character sort of a challenging person to still like. So I don't know, I'm for anything messy in fiction. I think it's fascinating and it's a lot of fun to write. So yeah, that's possibly a controversial opinion, but it just seems like anything goes when it comes to violence, but there seems to be a really strong resistance to like, oh no, like so and so could never cheat on their, you know, on their person. And I'm like, one of these things seems a lot more intense, but that's just me.
Yeah, Gina's feeling up those thrall muscles.
I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
I could not agree more. Honestly, I couldn't agree more. I love that answer so much.
Anyone else? Who's next?
Kai.
That would be
Kai.
I didn't know if Cole wanted to ask.
No, I think
so
that was
didn't
it for
wanna
me for now.
intrude. I suppose on that topic, what I wanted to ask, and I apologize if this is a little vague, but or if you can't be specific on this, but
Sure.
would you say that there's anything special, like any implications you can draw from Shadows Rising that relate to current lore that we're dealing with now? Maybe something that's going to elaborate more on something that might otherwise be just a humble detail. Or is it all going to be fresh, if that makes sense?
No, I think there's definitely seeds that have been planted already in multiple expansions that Blizzard is playing a long game here. Like there's stuff that I know that I've put into this book that may not pay off for like possibly another expansion. Like there are really long-term goals for some of these characters and some of these subplots. So I think you do get a little bit of information in this book about like ongoing lore questions. And obviously there's also some foreshadowing for stuff that will be dealt with in Shadowlands. Like I would say there's both. And then there's also, when I watch videos or whatever, people like speculating about the excerpts and things. I think a lot of the mysteries that people are picking up on are just things that get resolved in the book, right? Like they're smaller scope questions, and it seems really exciting and mysterious because you just don't have all of it in front of you. But yeah, so I would say like you get all three, right? You get answers to, or not answers, but tidbits about ongoing lore concerns and questions, set up for stuff that will pay off in Shadowlands, set up for stuff that will pay off way later than that, and then like just questions that are answered within the book itself.
Yeah, I imagine that's probably a big challenge whenever it comes to writing, is kind of breadcrumbing along, like plots you might want to explore now, or people just really want to explore right now, but you can't get into all of that in just one book or one short story or something like that.
Yeah, and I think, I think I'm really resistant to the idea of like, I have a lot of people in my ear of like, when do the Night Elves get justice? And it's like, this is a long story. Like, it's not all going to get resolved 5 minutes after the event happens, right? Like, not only is that not how life works, but it's just not compelling to have one thing happen and immediately the result is the next event. Like, you kind of need to tease out some of these things to have like a better payoff. And to me, it also sets up so many interesting questions like within the alliance of, well, what do you do when it's sort of like how do you handle payback when that attack was specific on the Night Elves? Like, now do all these other, allied races have to like punish the Horde for what was done to one race? And the answer is yes, but it's also tricky, right? Because you're balancing so many agendas and so many opinions. So yeah, like I would just tell people like, be patient. Like, there may be answers to questions that come, but it may take a while. Like it's a big world. There's a lot to resolve. And sometimes like some of my job in this book was to sort of move that conversation like a little bit forward. It's not like done. The conversation isn't finished, but it's, bringing it up again, keeping it fresh in your mind so that, in the next content, in the next expansion, they can come back to that.
I love that so much. I definitely do believe delayed gratification is much better than just having all the answers up front.
Right. I mean, if Teldrassil burned and then in the next patch you kill Sylvanas or something, like, to me, that's not very satisfying. That's not like, I mean, I guess it would be justice in a sense, but I also think it may not be the smartest way to play the story. And I think at the end of the day, people get their own feelings and morality like mixed up with what is a fictional narrative, right? Which is, it's like, obviously she did terrible things. Like, I don't think anybody, I mean, maybe there are people who think morally it was the right move, but like, the fact is that it's fiction and it's kind of this sweeping epic soap opera. So it's going to be more satisfying if like it plays out with a longer timeline.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Everything is subjective.
And
Yeah.
that.
And that's so true what you said about things just kind of needing to play out. Like, one of my favorite storylines in World of Warcraft was actually the build-up of Garrosh Hellscream and his kind of slow descent over time, and then, like, even how the fans, too, how they were, when they were talking about him, like, some people in his early stages, like, agreed with him, and then some people didn't, and, like, even now, like, after he's died, like, people still talk about his actions, and it was that slow build-up to, like, the Siege of Orgrimmar and Mist that made it so satisfying in the end.
Yes. Yeah, and I think too, like, I see a lot of discussion about, like, oh, Sylvanas is just Garrosh 2.0, and it's like, you know, we, like, I look at the forums, I look at Reddit, I look at Twitter, like, I'm aware of what everybody's saying, and so is Blizzard. Like, to assume that they're just going to do the easiest or most obvious approach is probably not wise. I wouldn't make that assumption. I would make the assumption that, like, there could be something coming here. There could be a twist that you don't know about, that I don't know about even. So, yeah, I think it's important in a game of this scale to sort of, like, just be patient. Like, be patient. There's a lot of stories to get through. There's a lot of factions to cover. Yeah, that would be my advice.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's so many different things you could do in the Warcraft universe. It's awesome. Was it challenging writing a character like Nathanos Blightcaller, since he's kind of a split character that people love, some people love to hate him? And was it, like, fun to write a character like that in a way?
It's a lot of fun. I mean, again, there's a lot of anxiety because you just really want to get it right. And I'm sure there will be people who are mad because when I'm in his POV, like, I'm on his side. Like, that's just how I approach every character. Whoever I'm writing that day, I'm their biggest fan. You have to be. You have to, like, put yourself in their head and really understand their past and their motivations in order to, like, make them feel fully realized and well-rounded. And I think it's easy, it's tempting with sort of a quote-unquote villainous character to just make them kind of cartoonishly awful. But no, I think it's fun. I think it is certainly a challenge, just because, again, like, he's such a long-standing character. There's so much about him that you really have to research and hold true at all times when you're writing him. But no, it's not any more difficult than writing, like, Anduin or anyone else, anyone who you would classify as, like, classically good or neutral or whatever. And yeah, and honestly, like, I have a lot of fun with him because I've always enjoyed writing kind of, like, dry, snarky characters. That's always sort of been my thing. So I didn't find him a particular challenge. Some of the other characters, maybe just because I didn't know them as well. You know what I mean? Like, I have my own, obviously, like, interests in the world, and so there are just characters and pockets of the lore that I happen to know better. So I think it was only challenging when it was a character that I just had to do, like, a lot of research on and a lot of reading, because then you're sort of, like, playing catch up, where I felt, like, pretty confident writing Nathanos. I was like, I think I have a handle on what makes this guy tick, and I hope too I brought some interesting perspective to his relationship with Sylvanas. I think, like, I definitely think I put my own spin on there's my own take and my own read on the sort of the ins and outs of their dynamics. So that's challenging only in the sense that, like, I hope people like it, right? Like, I hope it resonates with people. I hope it feels realistic. So
that actually is really interesting to hear about, just because, like, I actually, he's one of the characters, when I saw him, like, on the cover and that he was going to be featured, I was really excited just to find out some more about what he's been up to, I guess, after 8.2.5.
Well, good. Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, there'll be a lot for you in this book for sure. And, and I think you'll learn about him in kind of a new way. I never want to, like, it's tempting to always give these characters that are so, that are kind of tough and kind of, like, armored, to give them, like, too much of a squishy center and too much of a, like, oh, but really on the inside, like, they're real sweet, like, I didn't want to do that. That wasn't my goal, but I did want to give him, like, valid relatable motivations. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Especially for those people who maybe don't like him and maybe, hate everything he's ever done and roll their eyes when, he's on the screen. Like, I'm hoping that the work I've done makes them maybe like reconsider that opinion. Really? Squeaking again? Okay. He went under the couch to do it. Now he's like, no, she's gonna steal my toy.
He's like, I heard the word to Thanos at the
Yeah. He's like, Mom, I don't like that guy.
So I think we'll throw the next question back at Skull.
Hello there again. When it came to naming Thrall's daughter, since you said that on Twitter, were you able to have any involvement with like Chris Metzen? Like, did you ask him on any pointers or like when like naming her, like any ideas?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope, I did not. I just went for it. I didn't even ask permission. I just did it. Because, I don't know, I have a very allergic reaction to looking through some of these wikis and seeing, like, all the male relatives have names, but none of the female characters do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sons, and cousins, and third cousins all are boys that have names, and then it's like, and wife, or and daughter, and you're like, don't like that. So yeah, so I actually named Sourfang's wife too, because she.
Oh, really?
She never had a name, so that was bothersome to me. So I was like, all right, you know what? You get a name, and you get a name, and you get a name. I just went with something that I thought. I also have I have an also allergic reaction to like too much fan servicey naming in terms of like, oh, they named it after like some lore character. You know what I mean? Like most people just name their kids regular names. Like
Bob.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna name my kid after like, well, maybe I will name them something geeky if I ever have a kid, but you know what I mean? It's like I think when it gets too referential like that, it's just kind of like, I don't know. It makes me roll my eyes a little bit. So. This isn't a Harry Potter scenario where like it's she has like 8 names of different lore characters. She just has like an orc name. Like she just gets like a nice orc name. So it's not referential at all.
I was like I didn't even know that he had like a daughter. I knew like he had another kid. I was like, all right. I think my fan theory was always that he had another daughter, but he had a son, he had a daughter because it showed in like Vajir that he had a daughter and a son, and I always liked that idea.
Yeah, I was just going off of like the wikis and the dossiers, and everywhere I looked, there were like theories about her name or like rumors about what her name was, but it was never nailed down, and that just seemed weird to me. So, especially because I'm kind of for this idea of like eventually, I personally would not mind a time skip. I would not mind if like some of these big banner characters got sort of like soft retired and like their kids were like the next generation or the next characters that we got to deal with. So I was like, well, maybe this will pay off down the line if she ever steps up to do something. But
yeah, because we got Moira's son, we've got Durak. Like I was like in my mind of like Anduin, because like Anduin for the longest time was like this little kid around all these big leaders who are already adults. Now he's the adult, and he's going to be like this figure for these kids someday. Yeah, I always kind of like that contrast.
Yeah, and I think we all kind of got a kick out of like he was just this little nerdy kid running around the keep, ages ago, and now he's the king. So I like getting that sense of time progressing and that sense of like the world isn't static. It's always changing a little bit.
It's really surreal going back and playing like WoW Classic now.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. I think I was actually like playing Classic pretty hardcore when I was working on this book. So I definitely dropped in some like vanilla WoW references because I just was like so submerged in it at that point that I think there's like maybe 1 or 2. I think Shaw probably gets the most because like he's such a huge part of the Alliance side of things in vanilla. So
I was going to say earlier when you were speaking of like character motivations and such, I'm going to lead right into this question because you gave an answer I really loved. because this is I'm a bit of a broken record whenever it comes to this, especially on the podcast. But I love ideologies, seeing them clash or seeing how they kind of come together. And obviously, whenever it comes to Shadows Rising, Shadowlands, and etc., Sylvanas, Nathanos, there's a lot of clashing ideals here, and they're not just going to be, as you said earlier, like cartoon villain, just mustache twirling for the sake of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of consequentialist like characters, like ones that are doing ends justify the means kinds of things, and also seeing how they clash with other characters that are acting more on their passions and what they feel is right. And my question is, whenever it comes to Sylvanas, Nathanos, and everyone else involved that you're allowed to speak of course, what do you think of their motivations? Maybe for you as a person, do you feel they're misguided? Do you feel... I'm sure you know what I'm asking.
No, okay, so yeah, I'll try to answer this as much as I can. I think one of the things that I was really interested in, especially, so this is not a Sylvanas book. I just want to make that like crystal clear. She is not on the cover. She's barely mentioned in the copy on the back. She is certainly, her presence is certainly felt, right? Like everyone is very much obsessed with what she's doing, but she's not like a major POV character. I just want to like make that very clear, because I think there are some people expecting this to be like the Sylvanas book, and I was like, she'd be on the cover. Trust me, she's marketing gold. She would be on the cover if we could justify it. But so our sort of way into what she's up to and what her long-term goals are, right, is Syrah and Nathanos. Like they're her squad kind of right now. And our way into her orbit. And I think what I was most interested in, obviously there are times where I had to just straight up drop clues to like what she's doing, like pretty obviously there are conversations between Syrah and Nathanos where people are that's where a lot of the speculation will come from, I think. But my interest really was like, okay, kind of, and honestly, I don't know a ton of details about her long-term goals. I know some of the shorter term ones, but like I was given only exactly what I needed to accomplish this book. So like I don't have Shadowlands spoilers. I don't even know a ton of what happens in the expansion. So it's even hard for me to kind of like speculate. I can a little bit, but yeah, I was more interested in like, okay, knowing kind of what she's after. Where does Nathanos fit into this? Because is this also his goal? Like, is her goal his goal, or is he just obsessed with her? Like, to me, in my reading of what's happening, and I think maybe this comes through in the book, is that he's kind of just hyper-focused on her, and that blinds him a little bit to everything else. Like, I think she's really his weakness, right? Like, she's his strength, but she's also his weakness. So to me, that was an interesting way to sort of get it. Like my way into him was through that, was sort of this idea of like, love is great, but it can also really mess you up, and it can really make you do some pretty stupid things and make you lose sight of maybe parts of that person that aren't so great, right? Like, I think the longevity of their relationship, I think how much they've been through, I think that's all sort of like they're sort of trauma bonded in this way. And especially on his side, I think it's especially strong. And so I really was interested in examining like the dynamics of their relationship and what it means to sort of like lose yourself in love for someone else. Yeah, Smidge, great. I was making a really poignant point, and you just get your little squishy cow out. Okay. But yeah, no, I think that's where I was really interested, was finding a motivation that's relatable and that maybe some of us have experienced, and not just again this sort of like, we're taking over the world. Like, I just don't think that's anything people can really relate to. So I try to always look at their ideologies and their experiences on a much more like micro level, on a much more like quote unquote human level, because I think that's always more interesting than I think it's really hard to like conceptualize these big like end of world ideas, right? And to me, it's much more interesting if it's sort of something that you can be like, oh yeah, like I've kind of been there, or I get that. So I don't know if that does that answer your question. Maybe not.
Yeah, I think it's a decent enough answer because it's difficult. I'm sorry. I hope that didn't sound to me.
No,
What I
no.
mean
It's
to
I
say-
just it's like again, I can't really like I don't necessarily agree with what a lot of the characters in this book do, right? Like I think like I love Talanji, but she is very messed up about revenge on Jaina, right? Like she's so furious about what happened at the siege on her city that like it makes her do dumb things. And I would not like do I would wish that I could counsel her against those things, right? But like a person is who they are and you have to go with those motivations whether or not you like them or whether or not you agree with them. To a certain extent their path is not fixed, you know, and characters learn lessons in this book and change, but yeah, there's a ton of characters that I personally like but who I'm like, no, that's a dumb thing. Like no, don't do that, right? But they would, that is what they would do. So yeah, so that they kind of fall into that category where I'm like, you know, I'm also always kind of weighing it against like fantasy medieval ethics, which are not our ethics, you know, like what you would do to win a war. Like I hope I would never want to be put in that position because I'm a pacifist, number one, but also like you can't argue that what she did is pretty freaking effective. And like if you really wanted to win a war and you really wanted to make a statement, I mean, she did it, right? So I'm always looking at it through that lens too of like, this is not our world, this is not our morality necessarily. So, you know, how Nathanos feels about that versus someone else, you know, it's going to be relative. It's going to be totally different. And especially because he has like insider information about what her long-term goals are, so he sees it all differently, right? Like the way the night elves see it is not going to be the way he sees it because they have totally different points of view about what was driving it. So yeah, I hope that I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it was wonderful. Thank you. I'm very interested, especially in Talanji, but I'm gonna let Box take the reins again.
No, that was awesome. I really like how you brought up Sylvanas and Nathanos' relationship and like his point of view and like kind of stepping into the character's shoes almost. And like, because one thing you had mentioned, and it was kind of about like what he thinks. Like one of my favorite moments in Battle for Azeroth for him was like that little bit of like doubt right before the burning of Teldrassil in the cinematic, where he kind of looks down a little bit right before they essentially burned down the tree.
Yeah, I don't think he's, you know, like I said, I think my reading of him, and you know, I don't want to say that I'm the end all be all. I'm not. There are a lot of ways to interpret his character, but my interpretation again is that his loyalties are to her, not necessarily to the plan, if that makes sense, you know? And so I think he really does do some things that he might not have otherwise done if it was a different commander telling him to do it.
Right. That's actually really interesting. Okay, so I guess for the next question, are there any dead lore characters you hope to see in Shadowlands?
A lot. A lot. I think I probably told on myself a little bit with a moment in verse. I would love to see Kael'thas come back. And obviously data miners have been doing their thing, but yeah, I mean, yes and no, because I'm also a big fan of like make a big decision in the narrative and then be true to it, right? Like I'm more for like kill off a character and that's that. Like they're done. They don't get to come back because then it like cheapens the loss. But because of the nature of Shadowlands, I think it's a different beast, right? We are dealing explicitly with sort of this afterlife of the world. So I think this is like the one exception where I'm like, okay, I'm actually pretty interested to see how this plays out. But I do hope it doesn't sort of open this door to like, well, now anyone can come back, because I don't I don't like that.
Look, guys, Vol'jin's war chief again.
Right. I really like when if you take a big risk or you make a big decision in any story, like stick with it and stand by it and let the consequences of those actions play out. So yeah, I think my only nervousness would be like, I just don't want this to be now an excuse for anyone to come back indefinitely. Obviously for this expansion, it's one thing, but yeah, but I am interested to see how Kael'thas might be operating in the Shadowlands. That would be my number one, I think.
No, absolutely. I think a lot of fans are really excited about him coming back. That's going to be one of the most interesting parts. I think the cool thing too, like you said, like we'll be able to kind of get like maybe like smaller scale storylines for the dead characters, like because of the nature of the expansion, but nothing. Hopefully, like okay, everybody who died on the Broken Shore is back or something, like stuff like that.
Yeah, that's kind of my one concern, right? Is like I like that characters die. I think especially in a game that's this sort of like, I mean, it's World of Warcraft. Like I guess people are gonna die. So yeah, I don't know. And again too, we have such a massive cast already to work with. I think there's no problem in sort of paring it back and having characters come and go like that.
Right. And like the thing that I find like absolutely interesting sometimes is when a leader like Vol'jin does get killed off, somebody has to fill those shoes. So like one of the characters I'm really excited to see in the next expansion is Rokhan and how he's going to be dealing with the mantle of leadership for the Darkspear.
Yeah, he has a pretty decent presence in the book, so you'll get to see some of him for sure. Ooh. And yeah, I mean, trolls in general are kind of the focus, I would say. But again, we are balancing like 3 factions, so
right.
There's like 14, 15 character perspectives in this book, I think. So it's a lot.
Wow.
And they're all except for one like actual established in-game characters. There's one character I created for this book who has their own POV, but everybody else is like a banner character.
Very, very cool.
I just want to add I just want to add that you're my spirit animal, because everything you said about like death and its meaningfulness, you don't want that diminished. I could not agree more. Like I feel that so much.
I think it's easy to let your feelings of like, God, that was a cool character, like, right, like that can get in the way and you can want them back, but I think it just takes away so much of the impact of moments like that. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
So yeah, so I'm all for like, no, like take a big swing, but like stand by it.
No, 100%. It just gives a big punch to the storyline like that, with keeping like you said, like when you kill a character, keep the character dead and just kind of move on.
Yes, yeah. That's my personal. Again, I don't know what the consequences of Shadowlands will be, so don't take that as like insider like information. I'm just stating my own preferences.
So I think I'm gonna throw the next question back to Skull.
All right, one of the most Skull Shorty themed questions of all time, and this was hinted at a few days ago, I think. Is Rexxar in Shadows Rising at all, and do you like him or love him?
Oh, I wish he was. There wasn't really a place for him, unfortunately. I mean, there like again, where there's already so many. I cannot stress enough how many characters are in this book. That like it honestly, I feel like it would have almost been a disservice, because it's like he would have gotten like a cameo maybe. I'm a big fan. I mean, I gotta say that guy has wrecked me so many times in Classic, just running between zones. But yeah, no, I've always been a fan of his. I think he's like a fascinating character. I love his like aesthetic. His whole design is fantastic. And I'm a big I love hunters and hunter pets. So I was so stoked when he was like a pretty decent sized part of Legion, at least for hunters. But yeah, no, I mean, I think he's great. I wish, again, like, that's one of the most heartbreaking things when you do a book like this, is like all the characters you don't get to play with, right? Like, there's so many that I was like, oh, I wish there was a way to like justify bringing this person in, because God, I would love to like get my hands on them. But I think I still got very lucky in terms of who I got to to write. So, I'll try to just be grateful for that.
Yeah, he's been one of my favorite characters since I was a kid, so it's just like they don't use him enough, and it's always frustrating for me. They were gonna
only orc or ogre hybrid in the game.
As far as his model goes, there is like his whole family village in Outlands in the Machnathal village. But he's the one with the only model. He's the only one that like is the most notable and is doing things still.
Sure.
But yeah, they don't use him enough, and that always frustrates me. But that's okay. It's always for the future.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I promise there's other cool.
No, there's Thrall at least. So. Yeah,
Thrall's in it a fair bit. So.
That makes it okay for me at least. I understand like he can't fit every character, and it's good to know that now, at least for me.
Yes, adjust your expectations. There's no juicy XR content in this book, unfortunately.
I think that's it for me. You can do your question now, Kai.
All right. This one's broad, but I'm gonna embrace it. Take it your own way, wherever you want to go. How do you feel about the faction conflict? Do you feel it adds to the story? What service do you feel it does, and how do you like working with that framework? I guess.
That's such a hard question. The problem I think is for me personally, I kind of wish, like way back in the day, when the first expansions were coming out, I wish there had kind of been like an overarching decision of like, this game is going to be about the faction conflict, or it's not going to be about the faction conflict. I think for me, it starts to get murky, especially when you're working on a book like this, where there's a treaty in place, but there's still like antagonists in a way. So it becomes really hard to judge, like, okay, well, what would they allow each other to do? Where's the line? Like, a lot of these characters on either side have worked with each other a lot now. So, Thrall and Jaina are the perfect example. Like, they have such a built-up relationship in terms of, like, trusting each other. So, how do you kind of navigate that? Does that, and then how do you navigate it when there's other Horde characters who, like, hate her? Like, Talanji, for example. So, it makes it challenging and interesting to work on. I will say I wish, in the bigger picture of the game, that there was a little more decision making in that sense of like, this game is always going to be just Horde versus Alliance. If there's outside threats, they'll deal with them on their own, right? Like, they'll have their own approaches to how it gets dealt with. But having said that, that would make... I think there's such a bleed over now where, like, I'm both sides, right? Like, I have characters on both sides. I think most people do. And so I think it's really hard to tell the story if you have completely separate faction stories going on, right? Like, it makes it really hard to tell one compelling narrative for the whole community if you have it split down the middle. So I think just by virtue of it's a more story-focused game now, it's a more coherent story now, I think it's almost like necessary to kind of make it less about Horde versus Alliance and more like outside threat versus the world, if that makes sense. But I think it's interesting. I think, in this book in particular, I had a very interesting period of history to work with where there's sort of this unprecedented peace, I guess, between the two sides, and a sense of like both sides needing to recover. Both sides are pretty weakened by the war, and there's a lot of just like kind of nursing your wounds and taking stock of where we're at. And then this sense of like, well, God, what if they break the treaty and attack us? We're screwed, right? Because we have no resources, we have no troops. Like, there's a lot of internal tension. There's a lot of internal fighting going on. So, it's an interesting part of the history to get to play with. But yeah, I have like, I'm of two minds of it, right? Because I do think it's kind of a cool setup to have the game revolve around this faction conflict. But I do see why they've kind of moved away from it, because it is really hard to tell like dueling narratives and have everyone be happy. Because if I'm like only alliance, right, then I'm literally missing out on like half the story. if you do it that way, like you would just never really know what was going on with the other side. So yeah, so I think it's kind of by necessity that it's moved more towards this like centralized narrative, if that answers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I felt ultimately on the topic of ideals earlier, that's kind of what it boils down to. They're different ideals, different approaches, but they're both against the same enemy, I suppose, is my point of view.
Yeah, and I think it's hard, like, if I only played Alliance, but then I knew about, like, Thrall and some of those other characters, I think I'd be kind of bummed that I'd never get to interface with them. You know what I mean? I think that would be kind of sad.
Very.
Okay, so I think from there, so would you be open to doing more short stories like A Moment in Verse if Blizzard ever asked you to come back and do something like that again? Because I think the community really, really liked that one.
I would love to. I've made it clear to them that I'm available and that if they want to drop me in, like let me just parachute in to at any point. I feel like I'm in reserve. So yeah, I hope they let me. I would absolutely love to. That was some of the most fun I've had writing in a long time. And also just getting to like kind of flex those poetry muscles from university that I haven't used in like a decade. So yeah, I mean, I would love to. There's so many things you could do, like so many things you could explore. I personally think it would be a great way to sort of give some of the like less some of the allied races that I feel like have maybe gotten kind of a short shrift. Like I would love to do something with Void Elves. I think they're amazing. So yeah, I would love to. I hope they let me. I really do. I hope they let me. I hope as a proof of concept that A Moment in Verse worked and people really liked it. I hope that sort of, motivates them to let me do more. But yeah, we'll see. I can't really say for sure. I don't have any word one way or the other right now. So
no, I think that would be absolutely awesome. Like it was so fun too, just seeing all the people post about it on Twitter like the next day. So it was awesome. So.
Well, and it was really fun to do something that just nobody knew was coming, right? Like there were no leaks, there was no information. We really managed to like blindside everyone. It was so hard because I knew it was coming, and I was like, oh, it's so hard not to like tease that this is happening, but it's going to be so much better if we just drop it on them.
And it's such a good way too, like you said, to give like characters that might have had like a smaller role just a big storyline.
Like part of their life that isn't so action oriented. It's much quieter. It's much more of like an emotional growth. I think like that's always where I'm happiest anyway. So there are a few specific chapters in Shadows Rising where I think you can really feel that same energy that you get in A Moment in Verse, that same sense of like, yeah, no one's in a duel right now, but there's actually a lot of growth happening, right? Like there's there's a ton of like mental ground that's being trod. So I think those are probably my favorite. Obviously the big battles are epic and great, and those are fun, but like for me personally, I really am at my happiest when I can kind of move the conversation forward on a character's personality and emotional landscape.
No, absolutely. I think like again too, like if something ever happened to those characters, like just having them more fleshed out like that just feels totally awesome.
Yeah, and that's always my goal. Like, with the way I approached the characters in this book, it's like I want you to know them. Like, I want you to have like a sense of what they do on their day off. I want you to have a sense of like underneath this really epic veneer, like, but who are they? Like, what are their passions? What are their hobbies? Like, to me, that makes them so much more. Like, it's so much harder than when they're hurt or they're killed or like. All that work just adds up to like a more effective story in general. So So that's really where I was putting most of my energy when I was writing this, is like, how do we really make these like larger than life characters feel like someone you really understand?
Right. I hope they have you do more like that. Honestly, that'd be so awesome.
I do too. I love doing it. So
we'll throw the next question over to Skull.
All right, I'm sure you might not be able to answer this one, but what exactly was so important and or urgent that was trying to disrupt Thalrisra and Lorthamar's lovely moment there?
Okay, I'm gonna give you a podcast exclusive right now.
Oh,
Ooh.
Nothing, literally nothing. That was just to get the messenger there for a comedic beat, so that Lorthamar could lose his shit at him. That was literally it. No conspiracy. It does not tie directly into anything in Shadows Rising. There's no secrets. There's no explanation. It was literally to have it be a funny kind of slapstick moment and to break the tension, because he was sort of like about to, like, because he was struggling so much with whether or not they were going to kiss, but to have it be interrupted, like to have it snatched away, was what made him like, nope, need it. Kidding. No, nope, decision made. Gonna kiss her. So like, yes, that it was not a specific thing. It was literally just a construct for that short story. So
yeah, I was
speculation. I was like, okay, everyone is missing the forest for the trees here. This is not about this stupid messenger. It is about these two characters.
Yeah.
finally hook up. Like, yeah. No, it was just for the comedic beat there.
Yeah, I was thinking it was like some sort of like certain big important thing that like happens, because I know some spoilers that happen because beta, alpha. I was thinking, oh no, is that the reason why Lorthamar and Thalrisra miss out on that certain thing? And it's just like, okay.
I mean, if people want to pick one, if people want to pick an event that they think he's getting summoned back for, that's totally fine. That's your headcanon. That's totally cool. But from me, I am telling you, there was nothing deeper behind it than I thought it would make for a hilarious, like, little bit in the story.
They just want to know his opinion on new decor for Orgrimmar. Big spikes or little spikes?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, and the thing is, like, it's a, he speaks for Silvermoon, so it could be anything, right? It could be any minor emergency, but it was much more of a thematic way to demonstrate of him being like, no, I am dropping the hammer. I am not responding, right? Like, I am prioritizing this over whatever this minor emergency is. So it was much more to show that he had like grown and made and was now doing something that he would not have done before Thalrisra sort of like opened his mind to having a personal life.
Okay, that's reasonable for me.
I'm sorry, there's no detail.
No, it's good.
There, it was literally just to set up and finish off his like character arc in that story.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I just, that's something that I was like, all right, that's a good answer for me.
Very cool.
I think it's good on our good old boy Kai now.
All right. So I do have a question that, again, I don't know if it's safe to ask, but I'm gonna try anyway because I'm very interested. Might there be any references to Vol'jin and or his sons?
Ooh, I just skimmed the manuscript again last night, so this should be easy to answer. I think he comes up, but it's not a major part of the book.
Okay.
Like, I'm pretty sure he comes up, but it's not like, it's not a featured part of the story.
Oh, okay. Very interested in seeing where that's going. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it is a very troll-focused book, but Talanji doesn't have. I mean, she's obviously interfaced with him a tiny bit in that one quest, but this is much more sort of about her reign and the difficulties of joining the Horde and feeling like you're part of this larger faction now, and you did all these things for them, and now they're kind of like not doing anything for you. Like that's kind of where her story is at.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see what happens with kind of if she's going to be the one to bring all the trolls under her umbrella. I won't ask that directly, but
I would definitely not be able to answer.
Yeah, I didn't think so. But I'm very excited to see where that's going to go.
Very, very cool. So with the focus on trolls, is there any info in the book about King Rastakhan and the pact that he made with Bwonsamdi and how Talanji kind of feels about it?
Yes,
Ooh.
that's a huge part of the book. So unfortunately, because it's a huge part of the book, I can't really talk about it yet, obviously. But yeah, that is a massive, because Bwonsamdi's in it a lot. So it's like that's a big corner of her story. Her story is kind of two-part, right? It's like this relationship to the Horde, and then fixing the turmoil on her own continent. And obviously, like Bwonsamdi is a big part of that, and her father's legacy. So yeah, that's kind of like the two parts of her story.
She has to be in like a really tough part after Battle for Azeroth, because I imagine a lot of her people might be seeking revenge against the Alliance after they basically sacked Dazar'alor. But then the Horde basically just made a peace treaty with them, so...
You nailed it. There it is. That's one of the core conflicts of the novel.
Very, very awesome. So Skull, you...
It's me again. I have a, this is very uncanny for me. Well, I actually got like two questions that are like that, but I got Sylvanas Loyalist, Team Sylvanas Loyalist question here. Since we know that Syrah is a main character for the Sylvanas side of things, is it revealed in the book on how she kind of got away from Maiev from like the Darkshore Warfront?
Kind of. I'm not. I mean, there's a lot about her, right? And there's a lot about what it kind of means to go through the changes and transformation that she's gone through, and a lot about that, like that inner conflict for her. But I don't think there's like a specific outlining of that.
Okay.
Because again, a lot of time has passed. I mean, it's easy to forget that all the like the whole N'Zoth thing has happened. You know, like a lot of time has passed since. Not a lot. I mean, I guess whatever months, but there's been enough time has passed since then that it just doesn't really come up. But her relationship to the undead and to the night elves is definitely a big part of her story.
Okay, I always kind of like figured she either got out on her own or maybe Thanos helped her out or something. But yeah.
Yeah, we don't like take you through that part of her story, but yeah, if you're a Syrah fan or you're interested in her, there's definitely a lot of content in here.
I do like the Wardens. They're very cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're like core to this book, but there is definitely some Warden content.
Nice.
Very, very cool. Kai?
Yeah, see, I could never... This is another one of those questions I could not think of how to phrase best. I'm very interested in knowing a bit about Zakan.
Sure.
But it's hard to ask anything directly without getting spoilers. But I guess maybe... Because I know he's still kind of getting over what happened with Sarfang.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever it comes to his motivations, does he have anything beyond really just maybe finding his place within the Horde or finding out what the Horde really is? Can you weigh in on that?
I think he's in a really interesting phase of his life, right, where he sort of stumbled into a position he never imagined for himself, right? Like his relationship with Saurfang was, in a meta way and a real game way, very like accidental, right? So he's sort of struggling with this father figure that he had being gone. He has a lot of guilt, feeling like things could have gone differently. Maybe he could have saved him or intervened or done something. And so he's pretty like torn up about that, and also struggling to find, yeah, like you said, struggling to find sort of where he belongs in the Horde and what his path might be. And he's seen some pretty scary, intense stuff very recently, and it's made him have to grow up really fast. So he's sort of in this transitional period. And in the book, I think he's really used as almost like our window, like you and me players, right? Like he has this, he's suddenly standing amongst giants, and it's intimidating, it's terrifying. Like how do you find your way when everyone around you is like the biggest deal on Azeroth? And and so there's this sense of like, wow, I gotta like step up. I really have, this is my moment. Like I'm gonna live or die by the decisions I make here. And I think the big crux of his journey is like deciding whether or not to step up and to sort of like not fill the shoes that Sourfang left behind, because they're very different, right? They're not, he's never going to be Sourfang. That's not the point, but sort of the lessons that he learned from Sourfang, like kind of putting his money where his mouth is with those, and deciding like, okay, can I step up and do I have what it takes to like stand toe to toe with these like giants of the Horde? So, but I like that he has a much kind of softer side. He's more like playful and sweet and young and idealistic in a sense, and and scared. He's very scared, and that was a fun perspective to play with, because I feel like 90% of the characters in this book are very well established. They know who they are. They are these big titans of the game, whereas the Khan is sort of like floundering and still finding his way. And so it was nice to have a perspective that was like, yeah, no, he's just as starstruck by by all these people as we would be. So it was a cool perspective to have in the book.
I think that's one of the things I love about him most. He's very humble, very relatable in that regard. And
and I didn't want to just turn him into like comic relief. That's not necessarily his role in this, but he is like a lighter presence. He doesn't have this sort of like brooding darkness surrounding him all the time. So it's a nice break to sort of have him in there, because he's still, again, more sort of, yeah, like you said, humble and naive and optimistic. So it's a nice contrast to some of these more jaded characters.
Yeah, very, very good lens into the universe and such.
Yeah, and I love him. He's, by the end, I was a little like skeptical of his fame at first when he like became, the meme lord we all know and love. But after getting to spend so much time with him in this book, I really do like him, and I hope I make the case for him as a character.
I have a lot of faith in you thus far. I'll say that.
Thank you.
He is a good Zappy boy.
He is a good Zappy boy.
The Zappy boy.
And it's good to have characters that just are sort of golden-hearted and sweet. You know what I mean? I think it's nice, because even Talanji and Anduin, even though they're both 18 years old, they've already seen so much, and they're already kind of cynical in a way. So it's nice to just have someone who's like, no, like, I still think people are fundamentally good. I still think, people fundamentally want to do the right thing. And obviously that perspective gets challenged with some of the stuff he has to see and do. But it's just refreshing to kind of have that energy.
All right, you want to take the next one, Box?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what was your favorite moment in Battle for Azeroth?
Woo. That's tough. Oh my goodness. It's so funny too, because you're like, that's so much happened. Like, I'm trying to actually think back to like the beginning of it and not just go straight for like Teldrassil. Like, I want to maybe think back to the earlier stuff. What was my favorite? It's such a hard question. I will say no. Okay, I actually do know that. I will say when Jaina rolled up on her ghost magic pirate ship at the Battle of Lordaeron, I lost my absolute mind. I'm already a Jaina fangirl, and that whole setup was so epic. That whole sequence was epic, and then having her show up like that was just, oh yeah, that was iconic. That was super iconic, and just one of those like hell yeah moments that, you know, I guess it's a cliche, but I really did love it.
It was actually kind of nice too, because we hadn't really seen Jaina do much like after Mists of Pandaria, so it was good to see her again as a key player in BFA.
Yeah, and she's a great costume, and she's got a flying pirate ship. I can't stress that enough. It's so freaking cool.
That'll be the key to defeating Sylvanas in Shadowlands.
Yeah. yeah, I hope so. Oh, nice, yeah, the meme.
Jaina's dad's boat.
There were a lot of moments in BFA that seemed to have like a yeah feel when they happened though, like Reckoning, the Battle of Dazar'alor. Battle of Dazar'alor, I think, was probably my favorite part.
That was really cool. It was also really unexpected. I just didn't think, like, with how many cities got attacked and sieged and sacked, I just didn't think we would also attack that city. And get to see it from both sides. I think getting to see it from both sides was what was so cool in the raid. So. Oh
my gosh, the raid was so much fun.
I love that raid. I love that raid a lot.
That's my favorite raid from BFA, definitely.
I love the
High Tinker.
I love the quest line before it too, where the Alliance kind of like trick the Horde into going up into Nazmir, and then they attack like while they're trying to come back.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Like legit military strategy like that. I love, you know, like actual stuff you would try to pull off if you were in the midst of a war. I'm always game for that.
Right? Oh my gosh, that was like. I hope we see more stuff like that in the future. So cool.
The Horde got bamboozled.
They did. They got us a severe bamboozle.
So Skull. You have another question?
I ended up. I'm seeing the doc. We're ending up adding on the document onto like new questions, basically. But my brother just brought me an Arby's. All right, that's fun.
Oh dang, that's lucky.
Yeah. So like Thura's like the last notable Saurfang family member alive currently, as far as we know. Is she in the book at all? I have a lot of questions that are like, is this character in the book?
Yeah, a lot of those. I mean, some of them I'll just say no because I really don't think it ruins anything. I don't think it's necessarily spoils anything. I mean, she's not a big part. Honestly, Saurfang is not a big part of this book, other than like kind of his impact on Zappy Boy. There's not a ton of like Saurfang content because I just feel like he had his time. Like, I think he's a great character, but I personally. When I was approaching the Zakan chapters, I'm like, we got to hit a balance here because if this becomes all about Saurfang again, I think people will maybe be a little tired. So so he's definitely like mentioned. There's one sequence in particular that if you are a Saurfang fan, I think will make you very happy. But otherwise, no, he's not like a huge. Other than his like lingering impact on Zakan, he's not really a part of the book.
Yeah, I just really want to see the character Thura in action. She's the niece of Broxagar.
And... I know and again, it's one of those things where you're like, I wish I could have shoehorned in so many side characters, but again, it already feels very like bulky in terms of perspectives and who all's in it. And I was even straining to like make sure everyone got enough time. So it's just one of those sacrifices you have to make.
Yeah, that's completely reasonable. We can't always have characters that we really want in the books that we like.
And I hope she comes back. I hope she does play a part. Obviously, none of it is like, if someone's not in it, it's not like my personal bias against them or something. Yeah. It's literally just because the narrative had to play out a specific way.
Yeah, I'd really like to see her, because like Shadowlands to me, what I really want it to be about is just characters being able to interact with the dead. And if Thura got to interact with her uncles, and especially her her cousin Dranosh. I would really like that, and just like, this is my family and they're dead. I'm gonna interact with them. I'm gonna talk with them.
There's one sequence in this book in particular I think will interest you.
Ooh.
So that's all I'll say about that.
All right, I think that's it for my question. Kai, you got any others?
Let me ask you this: because we're speaking about relativity pretty recently. On that note, which character in all of Warcraft do you think you relate to most, and maybe why?
Oh my goodness. That's a really tough question. Because the events of this world are so much larger than life in so many ways that I can't say I've done any of that. But I know it's really weird. I brought up Tyrande on a live stream, and people in the comments were like, "Boo, Tyrande, she's so boring." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?" Like, okay, I don't. Maybe that's some slight misogyny happening, but I think she's cool as hell, and I think I probably personally would hook into her the most. I really find some similarities in the sense of like, I try to be a generally kind, good person, but there have been events in my life that have made me want to go full Night Warrior for sure. And I think that tension between being a pacifist and a generally nice person, but then knowing that there's sort of that darkness in all of us that can come out if you're pushed far enough. I think on a personal level, that's probably the character that I feel the most like one-on-one relatability with.
Yeah, I could definitely understand that, and I can't wait to see what she's going to be doing now.
Yep. Oh, I wish I could talk more about that. I really can't. That is one spoilery aspect of the book in terms of who's in it and what they do that I really can't say.
I completely understand. I frankly wouldn't even want the spoilers. I
get, and I think a lot of this stuff, a lot of the big stuff that I haven't been able to even like touch on yet, I think it's things you want to experience in the book for the first time.
Absolutely. That was all I had there. Did you have something, Fox?
So at the beginning of the podcast, I asked about the Horde Council and their struggles right after the events of BFA. Was it fun actually writing about the Alliance after Battle for Azeroth? Because it seemed like they were starting to head towards more of like a fractured state after BFA, because like characters like Tyrande didn't want peace with the Horde, characters like Gen didn't want peace with the Horde, and frankly a lot of them just want Sylvanas dead. But yeah.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And I think it is a huge, part of the book. It is one of the core tensions and one of the core conflicts in the book. Sort of this reckoning that's taking place, and, poor Anduin sort of having to try to satisfy everyone in the Alliance and finding out just how impossible that is in many ways. And I think I've said this on other podcasts where it's this cool foil where like the Horde is sort of beginning this experiment and the Alliance is like buckling under the inevitable end of it. You know what I mean? That's not just the Alliance is not going anywhere. That's not what I'm saying. But you know what I mean? Like they've sort of been trying to do this all along, and they're discovering how hard it is to balance everyone's different agendas. And I think I get to handle Anduin at a really interesting time in his life, and I hope everyone, particularly Christy Golden, because I'm terrified of her, I hope she likes what I did with him. I think I took some swings in terms of kind of nudging him in a different-ish direction, and I think too, like, a character like Gen, who, in my reading of him, one of the only thing that's kind of keeping him from going straight up rogue is like his respect and love for Anduin as like a, almost like a son. And so I think Gen's not a huge part of this book, unfortunately. I love a huge Gen fangirl, but he's kind of like sidelined in this, but and obviously like the Night Elf faction, their tensions are explored as well, and it's just sort of I think there's almost a sense of like sadness in a lot of ways of like, I think Anduin just really feels bad. Like I just really think he feels like he's failing people, and being the person he is, that's a lot that really weighs heavily on him. So you have sort of him at the center of all this swirling turmoil, and then you have Gen's opinions, you have the Night Elf opinions, and even within the Night Elves, there's like different voices that we get. So there's not unification on that end either of what the call should be. So and then while he's trying to, Anduin's trying to hold all that together, there's also hunting down Sylvanas, which ties into trying to make everybody happy. So yeah, it's a lot to balance, and I tried to be very, very aware at all times of like just what a bummer it is for Anduin. Like, I know that's a silly word, but you know what I mean? Like, just the sense of like, God, it's like one thing after another, right? And I hope that sense of sort of like desperation and frustration and exasperation comes through. I mean, he just like decked Wrathion, right, in that one cutscene. So he's kind of moving into this phase of being a little more action oriented, but also just pissed. So yeah, I don't know. I think I hope it offers a realistic and interesting kind of way into the sense of the Alliance is like really dealing with some stuff right now. It's really pretty bad, and yeah, I hope that answers the question, because it's like a totally different energy, right? And I think that comes through in the book, where like the Horde is like, it's almost like exciting. It's like, oh my gosh, like look at this crazy thing we're embarking on. Oh, it's actually that's hard. And then the Alliance is like, yep, it is. It's really, really hard. Let us tell you. So
I love the connection you actually made to the two of them right now at where they are. And the thing about Anduin too, like I really like what's become of his character lately. And again, like you were saying, like you see that kind of more, I don't want to say aggressive energy, but kind of aggressive energy when he sees Wrathion in the 8.3 cinematic. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I think the Anduin you see there should feel consistent with how he is in this book, right? Like that's sort of the jumping off point of his current energy is like you said, more aggressive and more. I think he's trying to balance being suitably angry but not reckless. I think that's sort of the tension that he's dealing with right now.
Very, very cool. It's I'm really looking forward to it. I think the direction the Alliance storyline, and I'm usually a Horde guy, like I love the Horde, I play mostly Horde, but I think the direction the Alliance story has been going in is gonna be like super interesting, so I'm really excited for it.
Yay! I hope you like what happens.
So Skull, do you have another question?
Is my microphone on?
Yep.
Oh, there we go. It's acting up a lot. I swear this is the last question where it's related to, is this character in the book? The last time we saw Gallywix, our favorite penguin goblin, he was said to have gone with Sylvanas and her loyalists from Orgrimmar. Is Jester with Sira and Nathanos in any way?
No.
Okay.
No. I would say there's a very minimal goblin presence in this book.
Poor Gazlo.
Yeah, Gazlo gets some good one-liners. But
that's good.
Yeah. No, Gazlo's there. I mean, he's around, but yeah, it's not a goblin-centric book. This one. Yeah,
you said it was very troll, and you got also the Alliance. But,
yeah, and I would say like the faction of Nathanos that Nathanos kind of represents. It's pretty his whole mission is very like kind of combat oriented. So that it's much more of a like boots on the ground kind of mission. And so I think that was that determined kind of like who was going to be around. So
Gallywix isn't much of a. He's more of a slouch. Unless he gets inside his mech, which people stole that from him as his mount.
He would be if anything he would be a behind the scenes kind of guy, but
yeah,
Yeah, the perspective is much more sort of like in the thick of it with Thanos and Sarah.
It's a shit. Like I love Gallywix, but I also understand again, like you can't always have these certain characters, and especially with Gallywix, he's not a guy that fights on the front lines. He's more of a schemer and a slouch too.
And again, it's like it's none of the absences in this book are intentional in terms of like trying to hurt anyone's feelings or trying to like stick it to any one character. It just literally is like there's so much that has to get done that it really had to just be the scope of certain perspectives.
The book can't handle too many of orc muscles like Rexar's.
Right. No, yeah. I mean, Thrall, we're pretty full up, honestly, on beefcakes in this book. There's quite a bit of beefcakey action. So I think Rexar might have like broken it. I don't know if it would even like been published. It just would have been too much. So
you can't handle the Rexar. You can't handle Thura. It's too much.
Yeah. That would have just tipped it right over the line.
You got any questions, Kai?
It was one we've already sort of touched upon, and I apologize if my dog sings the song for people.
Oh, well, I can't be mad at that.
Again, it feels like we've already covered this, but would you say any of the Allied Race or Allied Race leaders play a significant role in Shadows Rising?
Well, Talanji, no, I can't. Yeah, I think I've said this elsewhere, but she's kind of taking on the mantle of like demonstrating how difficult it is to fold all these allied races under a single banner, right? They definitely are around. You definitely hear from them, but this is not a Volpera book. I wish it was, right? I wish they would let me write like a Volpera novella or something, but no, yeah. So you'll see them, like they're around, but they're definitely not the focus because Talanji's kind of the surrogate, right? Of like to demonstrate how many agendas there are for this new council to balance, and just how complicated it can be when Bane's saying one thing and Talanji completely disagrees. So
yeah, it's so tempting to ask questions about her that are spoilerific, but
I know she really gets a lot of screen time in this book. So if you like her, you will be pleased. If you don't like her, you're probably gonna be annoyed. But yeah, and I think I think she has some pretty significant growth, and there's definitely a ton of obstacles put in her way. So she really is really put through the ringer in this one.
Very good. Back to you, Bucks.
So I think my last question actually is going to be about Illyria and Turalyon. Basically just, do we get to see them appear in the novel at all?
Oh yeah. They're they're on the back cover copy, so they are a significant portion of this book. Yeah. You get, I think you get each of their perspectives. So, yeah, they're both in it and quite active, and I think like a lot of ground is covered in terms of like lore specific stuff with them.
Very, very cool. I was always really excited to see them in Legion, so that'll be awesome.
Yeah, they're back and crazier than ever and messier than ever, I guess. So yeah, I mean, and that's like that's where I love to be, is like, oh, it's a dramatic, crazy relationship. Okay, I'm in. Let's do it. So yeah, they were a lot of fun to write and a challenge too, because again, they're like these big OG, larger than life kind of characters, and they're off screen for so much of the game's lifetime that I had to do quite a bit of heavy lifting to sort of like get people back into their minds and stuff like that. So
right, because they're almost from like, well, they are basically from like another time period almost, with how long they've been gone for. So they've been two characters that have really just interested me since they came back in 7.3.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, the other characters that are around them that we are familiar with and that have kind of been here all along. Like, they too are sort of like, how do you fit in here now? Like, what, like, it is like they're from another planet, right? Like, it's sort of, they're wedged back into these major leadership roles. And, I think there's a lot of questions about, like, have you guys changed so much in your absence? Like, do you even really fit in here anymore in this incarnation of Azeroth? So there's definitely a lot of time spent with them and a lot of really interesting questions raised about their roles and their the light and the void and things like that. So
very, very awesome. So Skull, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I still got at least 3. I figured because we still have at least half an hour left, I might as well keep adding them. So we know Thrall's in the book. Thrall has been having like these issues with the ability to commune with the elements, and to the point where he's just a warrior right now. Is there anything in reference to Thrall's disconnection with the elements in the book?
Yeah, it definitely comes up, and he's in a few of the more like action-oriented sequences, so it's kind of fun to get to have him fighting in this new body of his, this new bod, and but yeah, no, it comes up, and kind of the spirit realm in general is something that gets quite a bit of discussion and focus in the book. So I wouldn't say it's like his core problem in the book, but it certainly comes up. Yeah,
that's good, because that's like one of the things I really want them to. I want a story to focus on with, like, we kind of see like a glimpse of it in Legion, and then like in BFA it's like, yeah, he's just a warrior right now. He doesn't shoot lightning bolts, he doesn't throw rocks like he used to. He's in a funk.
Yeah, no, it's part of it. And I think too, because it's sort of been going on for so long, it's not like fresh in his mind necessarily. So, he's not like cut up about it the whole time, but he definitely, discusses it, and it's a part of the book.
Yay.
Very good.
Sorry, it's so hard to like.
No,
I'm like, yes, it's present.
Obviously, you can't tell us like, oh yeah,
Not to mention, I think it'd be kind of lame, right, if we just like know everything that's coming.
No, I want to read it.
So G-Firepod becomes war chief.
I hesitate even to be like, yeah, that person's it. You know what I mean? Like, I almost feel like that's too far. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to limit it to anyone that's been mentioned in the excerpts. It's like fair game to bring it up. But otherwise, I'm trying to keep quiet about, who's in it and what they do. And...
Yeah.
Right. Illidan shows up. Got it.
Yeah.
He returns at the very end of the book. You are prepared.
That's right.
We'll end up in alternate Draenor right at the end.
No. Oh no. You got any more questions, Kai?
I will ask one final one.
Okay.
This is a bit of a selfish question. What advice would you give for other aspiring authors, particularly fans of Warcraft?
Sure. I didn't really get offered any, my first IP thing I ever did was Star Wars, and that was after I had established my career pretty like, in a pretty solid way. I think at that point I had, 5, 6, 7, 8 books out, 9 books out. So, there's kind of two approaches to this, right? There's authors who are like, I just want to write for other properties. I just want to write like Halo books and Warcraft books and things like that. And that can be a career. Like, you can approach writing that way. There are a lot of great authors out there who literally only do fiction for properties like that. But I don't know about that as much because that wasn't my approach. Honestly, I didn't even know if I would ever get to do something like this. So my approach obviously was to just work on my own stuff as much as possible, make it as good as it could be, and with the hope that one day I would get asked to do something like this. And once you've, put out some books and right, I guess that's a whole other conversation of like, getting published. But once you've sort of established yourself as a writer, you can tell your agent like, hey, can you keep an ear to the ground or actively look for companies that want this kind of thing? Like, you kind of have to put yourself out there as interested and available, because there are a ton of authors who just don't want to do it at all. So a lot of times you can miss out if you don't, kind of put the word out there that this is something you want to do and something you want to explore. And then I would also say you have to be able to collaborate really well. You have to be able to take a lot of criticism, a lot of notes, because God knows how many times I screwed up writing this book, right? Like, there are just things I don't know about the universe as much as I try. So you're going to be told like, nope, you can't do this. Nope, this character would never say that. Nope, like they don't use this word if they're a night elf. Like, you have to be willing to just be like, okay, like you check your ego at the door and you do what they need you to do. And you need to be able to write really fast. The deadlines for IP work are ridiculous. Like, you need to be able to write a full book in less than 6 months usually. So that if you can't write fast and stick to deadlines like that, this is not the game for you. I don't mean Warcraft game. I mean the gig. This is not the gig for you if you can't produce quickly. And yeah, I mean, those are sort of the most crucial aspects, is being able to write like quickly and relatively well, right? Like, you still want the quality to be there. And you also need to be able to collaborate and listen. And, I didn't get to decide almost any major events in this book. That was not my job. My job is to be the conduit for this story, and to bring my style and my personality and my sense of humor and my voice. And there are little things here and there that I decided, obviously, and a few characters I invented, but like, by and large, you are there to tell someone else's story. So if those things don't appeal to you, this really isn't the sort of job you would like. And you're also like, you don't have to do this, but I choose to put myself out in front of the fandom and try to interact with them, because to me, part of this job is building trust and trying to give people a sense of like, no, like, you're in good hands. I really care. I listen. I know what's up. And hopefully that gives people like a sense of security and interest and things like that. But so for my way in, I don't really honestly know. Like, I have certain friends in the business who like literally all they've ever produced are like Halo books and things like that. But I don't know what their way in was to that job. I just know that for me, I sort of focused on establishing myself in my own right as a writer. And then once I felt like I had a pretty big career built up, I told my agent, like, look, if Assassin's Creed ever wants a book, if, BioWare ever wants a book, if Mass Effect wants a book, if Dragon Age, like World of Warcraft, Star Wars, like, here are the things I'm passionate about outside of my own writing, so if you hear about any of those jobs, like, let them know that I'm interested. And then even then, you still like audition essentially for the job. So even if you get on the list or the short list, you still have to prove that you can do it. So,
that is honestly a very enlightening answer. I love frameworks, and writing is a big passion. So it's something I definitely wanted to ask. Part of me wants to open up the topic to Mass Effect and stuff, but yeah, just because you mentioned that, I'm a huge Mass Effect fan, but that's not really relevant.
Yeah, well, and and it's one of those things where it's like, I know some of those IPs in and out, and I'm like, God, I really think I could be. I think it's too being like well suited to it. Like, I enjoy writing a lot of genres. I like writing sci-fi, fantasy, horror, romance, adventure, and so it just happened that I can kind of adapt my style to fit Warcraft, but like, I don't know if I would be well suited to write like, maybe like Dead Space, maybe, but even so, I think I'm maybe too like thinky thoughts oriented for an IP like that. Like that would be pure action horror all the time. And I'm not sure I would be good at that, right? So it's not just being willing, able, established, all that stuff. You still also have to have the right genre experience and the right style to sort of, like, I have a pretty general style. I don't have a super stylized voice to my work. So I think it actually fits really well with a lot of IPs because you're sort of coming in with a generalized voice, and I can then adapt that voice to every single character in the book so that you know when you're in a Thrall chapter and you know when you're in a Talanji chapter. Like they're not necessarily going to sound exactly the same. So that's building up that like kind of skill tool set from fan fiction of like being able to mimic speech patterns and really set yourself into another established character's head. Like those are definitely useful skills. Like I do not think that you would go awry practicing with fan fiction, because it is kind of the skill to be able to wear a bunch of different hats and adapt your voice to sort of mimic whoever you're dealing with.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
Got anything there, Box?
No, that was honestly awesome. Just to that really like that opens your eyes to so many things sometimes. Like I don't know, that was really cool. Thank you for that.
Of course. No, I mean I'm like a craft nerd, so I love talking about stuff like that, because it's a super interesting process. I think there's a lot of people who are well suited to the job, but it is different. It is really a different job than writing your own books. You're taking on a totally different set of challenges, so it's really not for everybody. And I'm not saying that to boast. I think that it's just some authors I just would not like it. I don't think so.
The thing about the 6-month time frame, I can't even imagine. That has to be incredibly challenging.
I wrote this book in under 2 months, easily.
Wow.
It just was like, I just was like, okay, I'm carving out this time, and I will, write at least a chapter, if not 2, every single day. And it came really fast, really, really easily. But I mean, my own books tend to take a lot longer than that because you're doing a lot more world building and your own research and things like that. But when something's so well established and we had such an ironclad outline for me to work from, that really takes a lot of the upfront work out of it. And you have a very specific roadmap and very specific characters. And so for me, it streamlines the process immensely.
Oh. So, Skull, do you have any more questions for today? And then we'll wrap down after that.
Yeah, I've got only 2 more, and I might as well put them both together. All right, so who would you say is your favorite lore character in Warcraft, and are you for the Alliance or for the Horde?
Well, I'm for both. I kind of have to be, right?
Yeah.
My initial faction was Alliance. Like this is just truth, facts. My first character in vanilla was a Night Elf rogue, and I raided with her for quite a while. And then actually, I don't know, there was internal guild politics, and I leveled a druid, and then ever since I've been a Night Elf druid main. So currently that is my main, but I have also a Zandalari troll druid who's like my horde main. So druids all the way down, I guess. And then I love Tyrande. I love Thrall. I'm a big Illidan fan. I really love Jaina. It's so hard because after writing this book, I feel like every character I got to write is my favorite. Because, you just... Oh, sirens, nice. Because you just get so inside their head, and you get to and that's tough because now there's like ones I want to mention, but I can't because they're a surprise in the book. But I think it'll be... I will put out this challenge. I think it will be... blisteringly obvious which character I had the most fun with. I don't think that'll be a mystery to anybody once they read the book. It'll be like, oh yeah, she really vibed with that one. So yeah, I don't know. I think I know Tyrande, controversial answer, but I really love her. And Jaina, kind of the like, the big heavy hitter ladies. Obviously, I think they're fascinating. So
you hear that, Box?
What, is that bad? Is that a bad answer?
Box isn't the biggest fan of Tyrande.
Just Tyrande. Jaina's awesome. But you know what though? You know what? Like, that's from the Horde point of view. But I can I've told Skull, like, I totally understand where she's coming from, especially right now. Like,
yeah, and I think again, like with what I got to do with the Night Elves in this book, maybe it'll change your mind, but we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I love Jaina. I just I think she's so cool, and I mean Talanji's really grown on me, obviously, from getting to spend so much time with her. And yeah, it's like it's hard to pick a fave once this question would have been much easier like before I wrote any books for Warcraft, right? Because then it's like just pure fan reaction. But like once you've sort of gotten to be with them in that sense, it makes it really hard to pick a favorite.
Well, Jaina is a frost mage, so no wonder why she's cold.
Difficult.
Definitely mine would be Rexxar and Thrall, but also Sarfang. I really like orcs. That's always been my my whole thing. I really I like all characters in Warcraft too, but like if I have to like choose like which ones I'm going to pick and like favorite over, it's definitely the more orc themed characters because I always really vibe with them.
Yeah, and I also am a big again Greymane fan. I kind of like the like stir characters. Like I kind of like when they come up and like come in and like mess things up and have really brash opinions and like because that to me that's like the most fun thing to write too, right? Is people who just sort of are like gonna do what they're gonna do and you can't stop them. But and like after this, like Anduin really grew on me a lot. I would say like ever since the Wrathion cinematic, he's really grown on me a ton, and then getting to handle him kind of post that, I was really happy with what I got to do. But yeah, it really makes it hard because they all feel like you're a little protective of all of them once you've gotten to live inside their head. And honestly, Nathanos was one of my favorites too, and it was wild, when I got the email for this and they were like, okay, these are kind of the people you're going to be dealing with. Is that cool? Do you want to do that? And Nathanos was one of them, and I was just like, oh my god, are you serious? Like, that's so freaking cool. So yeah, that's he's also I have like a list of 20 characters, I guess, that are my favorites. But yeah, because I'm such a fan of the game, not necessarily like a faction or a race. So yeah, I have a ton of favorite characters because I'm just a fan of like the story and the narrative in general.
Yeah, that's really fair. I play both Alliance and Horde. Obviously, I favor the Horde over the Alliance, but I still like both, and that's what I think the core of the game is, being able to play both.
Yeah, and I hope, with this book, because it encompasses so many perspectives, I hope that people who are kind of lean one faction or another get something cool when you're like, oh, maybe I actually kind of like this Alliance character more than I thought, or vice versa. So
yeah, when the Shattering came out with Christy Golden, that made me really like Anduin as a character, and it's kind of stuck. Like, I was the same age as him when that book came out, and I was like, oh, I really like that. Oh, my Moxie's trying to steal my fries.
This is why Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, this is why you play Pandaren. Play both factions.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was honestly one of the coolest things I think they ever did, was letting you get to do that. And yeah, and I'm a huge Pandaren. Like, it's one of those things where you're like, God, in hindsight, I wish I could go back and like write a book for Mists of Pandaria, right? Like, there's so much stuff like that, or Wrath of the Lich King. I mean, like, show me. It would be incredible.
Those are my two favorite expansions.
Same.
Mine would be Wrath and Legion are my two.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I'm just a huge fan. Like, I have like a Legion tattoo, and so it's obviously like
Demon Hunters are cool.
Yeah, I loved just the I don't know, the guild, the halls for your class and stuff. That's
yeah, I really liked, because like that was like with Rexxar, you finally got him back after like so many years and he's a follower. I wish they did more with him, but that's me all the time. So
yeah, see, I'm such a druid stan, and like the druid area, right, was just like a dream come true. I mean, I could just if I could live anywhere in Azeroth, it would probably be that. It would probably be the druid class. It's so relaxing.
Vol'jin is definitely my favorite zone in Legion. It's so beautiful, and the stuff with Ysera is heartbreaking. And then you got to hang out with Maiev, who's another of my favorite characters. There's just
I loved the Death Knight Order Hall campaign in Legion.
That's
so
another
good
one, yeah.
That is a good one. Yeah, I've played through all of them to some extent. Obviously, the Druid one more so, but yeah. So that would be my two, and I just it would be so cool to get to do books like that. And in some ways, I wish they would kind of. It's funny because it would not be financially wise, probably at all. It would be a dumb move, but to me, it's like. I think people still have so much love and nostalgia for those expansions that you could justify just doing a self-contained spin-off book, right? Of that time frame or characters that are kind of exclusive to that area. But I mean, they would never do it. It would be a stupid move. But
yeah.
But from a wishful thinking perspective, it would be awesome. Yeah, that would be the dream. But
well, Madeleine, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I can speak for all of us and say we really appreciate it, honestly.
Very much.
Yeah.
For having me.
Did you have anything else you wanted to say to the viewers before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. I think if you most people listening to this probably already know my Twitter, but it's at authorroux, AUTHOROUX. I can spell. And then that's also my Instagram handle, and I have a Facebook fan page. Just search my name and it'll come up. I have a website. I have a publicly listed email if you need to send me any questions, concerns, things like that. Yeah, I don't know. Just I hope you guys buy the book. I hope you love it, and I hope I get to keep working for World of Warcraft. It would be awesome.
I would say too. I love it.
I'm excited. I mean, I already was excited, but now I'm super excited, and I'm looking forward to reading the book. I already have it pre-ordered, so.
I echo that.
I really am, honest to God, excited to see what people think. It's so hard to kind of have all these secrets and not get to talk about it with people. So I'm hoping people nerd out, once it drops. So yeah, I'm looking forward to thoughts and feelings, but only the nice ones. Don't send me the mean ones. No, I'm kidding. It's fine. I can take it.
Send her all the mean ones for no Rexar.
That's right. Send me all your spiciest Rexar takes, and I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for being on today, Madeleine. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Shadows Rising releases on July 14th, 2020. So if you're interested, pick it up. Bye, guys.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.